Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
Kate Allgood, sports performance and mindset coach. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good. So I love to have mindset coaches come on, number one, near and dear to my heart. But sports performance, I definitely want to get into that because one of the things that I see regularly, especially like with middle schoolers and then even to high school and then all the way to college, is that sports performance is getting to be one of those beacons of hope for many individuals who are trying to leave their current situation. So I come from down and dirty type neighborhood, and most of the children there want to be rappers or they want to be some type of sports player, whether it be NFL, NBA, because they are hoping for that chance, their golden ticket to get out. And I was watching a video the other day. It was a gentleman. He was going to be drafted into the NFL, and he was around his whole family, and he knew that he was going to get there because the coaches have already been speaking with him, saying, "Hey, we need you for linebacker or something like that." And he worked hard, to get to that. But when he got the call from the coach and when the TV announced his name, you can see the tears in his eyes. He was just so happy. It was like, this right here is going to change not only my life, but my family's life. And, that's the burden of performance in sports, but then also the mindset of what he needs to do after that. So, I do want to get into your work. What got you into sports performance and mindset coaching work?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So my background is in athletics. I was a very high level hockey player, along with a lot of other sports, kind of on a recreational basis. And I've always loved sports, and sports has given me so much. And as you said, it's a great outlet for so many young students and individuals. And I was kind of among those. And when I went to undergrad, I was originally actually a sports management major, because again, I wanted to get involved with the world of sports and everything that, that world entails, even when you're in a career. But I realized that sports management, I don't think really fit me. And I happened to take a first year psychology class and just completely, fell in love with it and developed quite a passion for it, similar to my passion for sports. And so I think it was kind of merging my two passions together that kind of got me to where I am today. It wasn't, right off the bat, I didn't come out of undergrad and go right into being a sports performance mindset coach. I think I had to, get a little bit of life experience, work with athletes in a different way to really realize that this was the path I wanted to take and work with athletes more on the mindset side versus the physical training.
Okay. And what would an athlete get firsthand with working with you, let's say day one or month one?
Well, that's very a good question, because it's going to be a little bit dependent on the person and what their needs are, and obviously matching what their needs are. But definitely, I think right off the bat, for every athlete, because this is primarily one of the biggest things any athlete comes to see me for, is confidence. And that's going to get kind of worked on from day one in various forms, whether that's self-talk or having a really good pre-performance routine, having good mental preparation, making sure that they're reflecting and reviewing their performances in a way that's going to, yes, allow them to understand and look at how they can improve, but also help them to build confidence and to find those wins that were among their performances that otherwise they might have kind of pushed aside and not really looked at. So I think, across the board, that's definitely going to be something, any athlete coming to see me is going to start to develop from day one. And then maybe some of the other areas are going to be, a little bit unique based off of their extra needs or just the, nuances of their sport or what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the guy? His name is Tim Grover.
I've heard of him. Yes.
Yeah. So he's he was Michael Jordan's coach, basically like a sports performance coach, essentially. And he helped Michael, transcend what Michael was, Michael Jordan, basketball player. So before Tim came into picture, Michael was doing whatever he could, but he got to a new level, right? The types of food he ate, everything, the mindset he needed to have for his team. And we can even look at what Tim has done with Kobe also. And, it was something that sparked the whole personal development into athletes of getting a coach, a mentor, someone to come in besides the team's coach to come in and instill something further within the individual. And it was working on performance, working on mindset. And even today, like we can look at some of the top players like LeBron, and you don't have to like the guy. I don't like him, but you don't have to like him. He spends, upwards of $500,000+ on his mental health because he understands that in order for his body to be good, his mind needs to be better. So it's that confidence, as you were saying, like we need to instill that within the athletes and getting rid of so much self-doubt. And I talk about this quite a bit on the podcast, where limits are something that many children are going to be growing up within, whether it be from the school systems, whether it be from your parents, or simply themselves and their peers. It's something that if we instilled in them, they are going to, have that higher level of achievement just naturally. But yet, they are so worried about the mistakes that they can make or the fear of failure that most don't even try to do anything great. Would you say that what ends an athlete's career before it even starts would be that they are afraid to try and afraid to embrace change?
I think partly, being afraid to fail, being afraid to put so much time, energy, effort, investment into their sport, into their journey, and worrying that if they do all of that and the end outcome does not occur in the way that they think it should or hope that it will, that it was all a waste of time. And I think that in today's young athletes is a big thing that does stop them from really giving everything that they need to give to put themselves in the best possible opportunity to get the goals that they're aiming for, whether that's a college scholarship, turning pro, whatever it may be that they're really looking to do. So I think that is definitely one of the big things that blocks athletes right now, is just that fear of it not turning out perfectly or exactly the way that they want it to, and thinking that, maybe they shouldn't give everything to the journey because there is that unknown of how it will turn out.
I understand your takeaway might be different than someone else's takeaway, but what was your takeaway when you were all done playing hockey?
From that same standpoint, like whether it was worth it or not.
Yeah.
For me, it was always worth it. It was never that question never came to mind. I never thought about it in any point in my journey of thinking, is this worth what I'm doing? As if my, getting the scholarship or making this team or, scoring X amount of goals or whatever my goals were at the time, if I don't get that this was a waste of time. I never felt that way. And I never felt my parents felt that way, where they were investing all this obviously time and money for me. And I never felt the pressure to, need to get the outcomes that we were looking for, that they believed. And I believed that this was all worth it, that you get a lot out of the journey. And I think it's never a waste of time if you put your heart and soul into something.
Do you primarily work with individuals in like individual sports, like the single tennis, or more team sports?
I do a mix. Yeah, I've done a mix of everything. Pretty much any sport you can imagine under the sun, I've worked with. So no, there's no specific sport that I really focus in on.
Okay. And would you say there's a difference between the individual that is in an individual sport versus a team sport? Because I know, for example, a basketball player, sometimes they could be considered maybe a ball hog, or like they'd shoot and stuff and they don't work together as a team. Would you say that that's something that the athletes will have to look at?
There's nuances obviously between individual and team sports, and that obviously can play into, some of the work that we do. So yeah, there's something like what you were saying, maybe a team sport athlete may worry about, are they being a ball hog, or if they, let's say, I'm given my background in ice hockey, let's say if I was worrying about if I shoot this puck and it doesn't go in, what will my teammates then think? And then obviously vice versa, if I pass it and that person doesn't score, maybe I should have shot it. So there's definitely those little things where you maybe are worrying a little bit more about what your teammates and coaches are thinking about you and your performance, and are you making the right decisions, where you may not see that as much in the individual sports. But then again, individual athletes in those sports have to deal with the fact that they don't have that same support from teammates, from coaches. When you look at tennis or golf, when they're out there actually performing, they don't really have that support from those individuals. So they have different things they need to work on, and different challenges that present themselves because of the lack of team and maybe coaches right there to help coach them in that moment on how to do something.
I want to talk to you about skill versus talent. I know this is something that players might be thinking about when it comes to comparing themselves to someone. So we can look at, say, Tiger Woods, for example. I believe his dad played golf at him at a very young age. And maybe Tiger had the innate talent to play, but then he develops the skill to play golf from a very young age. Yet there could be someone who's maybe starting golf when they're 13, 14, 15, maybe just even in their 20s, if you want to just, be an adult. And they might say, well, I have to catch up to this individual. And, the disparity or the discrepancy between the skills is so vast. What's even the point of trying? Would you say that that's something that we should abandon, in the sense of looking at skill and talent and just looking more so at the sport and what we can do every single game?
Yeah, I think obviously you brought up a kind of that comparison, and I think you do need to look at yourself in your own development, your own journey, your own process, because really I think research is always changing, and there are opinions out there that there is no talent, it's all skill. And obviously someone like Tiger got thrown into a sport extremely young, so he started skill development at a very, very young age. And if you took someone who started a sport at 2 versus even 10, there's going to be a difference. And when, someone like Tiger hits the age of 10, because he's already been playing for 8 years, he's going to look naturally talented, but there's still been a lot of hours of time and work put into that point that has honed his skill sets. And so I think it really is looking at it from the standpoint that we as humans, we can develop skill sets. We are able to build and to develop ourselves, and we're always changing. There's no, there used to be a time where it kind of was like, oh, you got to a certain age and that's it. That's how you are. And that's not really the case, right? Everything is changing in terms of what we know. And so you have to kind of really look at yourself and just, what are the skills you're looking to develop, and how do you do that, and realize that it is always skill development, because that's what creates that growth mindset versus a fixed mindset thinking, I'm just not talented enough, or I don't have the talent that this person over here has. That makes you just not even try.
What would you say separates the greats? Would it be the time span that they have been in the craft, or in their craft, in their game? Or would it be something else that it's almost like you would look at them and you say like that person has something different?
Part of it is the time you spend in your craft. Absolutely. Part of it is the time you spend on your body and training your body and strength and agility and all those different factors. And then part of it is time spent on your mind and training your mind. And I think that's what separates the great, is they merge all 3 of those together, and they see them as equally important. They don't just spend all their time on their craft or all their time on their body. They're making sure that they take care of every facet to the degree that it needs to be taken care of. I think that's really what separates them.
Yeah. I like Kobe's nickname, the Black Mamba mentality, where, he's this all-rounder essentially, but he has, almost the same tenacity as what Michael had. And I remember in an interview with Kobe, he was asked like, who was your rival? And, in the game. And he says, while I was playing, no one, right? Like he was in a league of him, by himself. There was no competition. But then he went on to say, the only rival that I might have retired. And basically he was talking about Michael. And, like the relationship those two had was one of not only competition, but building each other up. Where sports today, it seems like, even though the camaraderie is there, it's almost like my team versus your team. And I understand, we have the the competitive nature necessary for the games, but sometimes we can look at that competitive nature and it could be, in a sense, toxic. I know this happens with basketball quite a bit. There could be so many squabbles and stuff. This happened with Shaq and Charles Barkley, I believe. I don't know if you remember that game. They basically they wanted to fight or something. So the story is Shaq's mom called with Charles' mom, and then basically moms were like, "You better cut that out," right? So moms came in and basically said, "All right, no more fighting." But it's almost like, so much that we fight for. And I wanted to ask about the idea versus passion versus competition, because both players were passionate. Both players were competitive, and they allowed that passion to, turn into anger for a moment. But then they were able to, eventually, say, hey, no more problems. But in our world today, it's almost like crew mindsets, and in the sense of, this is my crew, that's your crew, this is my block, this is my team. Do you find that having that type of mindset of this is mine, and I'm going against you, is something that's a good thing to have, or something that is going to be a detriment to them later on?
Yeah, obviously, from my standpoint, in my opinion, I think it can end up being a detriment or kind of get in your way at some point in time. I think you can be competitive, but the way that you are competitive needs to shift from, as you were kind of saying, like almost like a win-lose, I'm here to beat you, right? I'm either going to beat you, you're going to beat me, to being competitive with understanding that you're really trying to overcome the obstacles that get presented in front of you as an athlete, and what those obstacles are going to be different based off of your sport. If you are in a sport like basketball, obstacles are the team across from you. They're just the obstacle. So it's not so much about being them as figuring out how to overcome them to get to your end goal. And then if you're in an individual sport like golf, the obstacle is the golf course, right? It's actually not the person golfing beside you. You're trying to figure out that golf course and how to overcome the various aspects of it that are going to maybe get in your way from getting the score that you want, and just trying to figure that out. So I think you can still be competitive, but when you make that shift from, kind of win-lose, it's about you beating me or I beat you, to no, I'm just here to overcome my obstacle and to bring my very best. When both sides do that, you get the most out of each other, and you really raise the level of performance from both sides. And then it gets back into that pure enjoyment of the sport and trying to really elevate yourself and figure out and overcome that obstacle.
When we look at competition, would it be better to look at competition or in the aspect of, I'm trying to be better than I was yesterday, or I'm trying to be better than XYZ player?
If it's between those two, it's definitely yourself and trying to be better than you were the day before, than trying to be better than XYZ player, because that creates, when you're focusing on trying to be better than another player, that's where comparison can really creep in from a not a great place, more from a lack of confidence. You can definitely use other players to get us inspired and to look at, maybe different skill sets that you would like to develop within yourself, but it should always be driven to, how do I develop? How do I improve? Because your mindset should always be about yourself and your continuous improvement, rather than how do you stack up against everybody else. But obviously within the world, you kind of still maybe need that barometer of saying, like, if I'm trying to get to college or professional, I kind of need to know where I am with my skill set, to then maybe again figure out what do I need to develop and build off of to get to that level.
I want to get into the aspect of training. I was reading a book, and it's about mental illness, or just about like the mind. They said the best time to learn to play an instrument, and I know we're not talking about music, but it's just an example. The best time to learn to play an instrument is after you have worked out, because your brain is already, like, hey, I have this drive or something, right? So basically they said it's better to work out and to learn rather than to work out and veg out. They're basically what they were saying. Would you say there is a good time to work out? I know people have preferences to morning, to night. People are sometimes up at 4:00 in the morning working out. I know people have work, so they go after work or something like that. from your history of working with individuals and seeing what works firsthand and what maybe not or doesn't work, which would you say is a better option for individuals?
Yeah, I don't think there is much of a better option, especially in the world that I work in, where a lot of it's dictated by their team schedule. So they're going to work out at certain times based off of, their team. And some people are morning people, some people are night people, some people like to get, that done with first thing in the morning. And some people like to do it later. And I'm definitely not an expert in, kind of physiology and getting into, I guess, that side of when is the right time to work out. I generally, from my side, it's usually whenever you're actually going to follow through with working out is the best time to work out. So if that's 4 a.m., if that's at 9 a.m., if that's at 5 p.m. or 9 p.m., definitely going in and working out whenever you can get it done. Obviously, later in the day, you'd have to take into account that your body needs to be able to kind of, settle back down with enough time period before bed to get a good solid sleep, because that's a big part of the equation in the recovery. So, from that standpoint, I would maybe say, earlier is a little bit better from that standpoint. But, other than that, it really is when you're able to get in and do the workout, I think that is best. But again, a lot of my athletes, it really is dictated by their team and or school schedule. And that's what kind of dictates when they're going to work out.
Is there a thing such as overtraining, so like they can be overtrained?
I know definitely there is such a thing as overtraining, and obviously there's the physiological side to it. And for me, definitely somebody can work way too hard and maybe do way too much repetition, or if they're feeling stuck or underperforming, they have that kind of tendency to go and just do more physical practice to the point where that's not actually helping them. And maybe, they're getting to the point where they're fatiguing themselves, not properly recovering, both physically and mentally. And it's more of the mental skills that they need to really work on. So I think that is definitely something that athletes can do.
Yeah, that's important to know. I know sometimes people are in a huge hurry to get the results, especially like even if we walk away from the team aspect and we say, let's say they worked really hard, worked for a team, play basketball, whatever sport, and then they grow older. And so now their body has changed and maybe they are anticipating being able to do the same things that they could do. So typically it could be after injury, after a certain span of time. If you're not keeping up with that physical demand of what what you want your body to do, there's going to have some, or there will be repercussions. And I do want to get into a conversation that is definitely going to be biased in the sense of it's an opinion of yourself or a medical professional. Maybe I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of Dan Millman. He was a Olympic gold medalist, and he was in a motorcycle accident. So right before his Olympic trials to see if he would be put on the team for the USA Olympic team for gymnastics, he was in this motorcycle accident. He basically shattered his leg, and all the doctors, all the coaches, and they basically said, listen to the doctors. The doctor said, you're not going to be able to walk in. The doctor says, you're not going to be able to be in the Olympics. And it was a dream of his to win gold. And he had to go on this journey to overcome all the naysayers, overcome his injury, and then one day eventually to win gold. So his journey or his story was one of not listening to the professionals and not listening to the doctors, because he had something within him, and it was the idea of he was going to win regardless. And so what he did, since his coaches essentially abandoned him, the doctors abandoned him, was that he got a mentor. He got someone else that says, if that's your dream, then let's go for it. A coach, a mentor, right? And his story was one of human potential. He had the potential within him, but there was just so many outside stimulus saying that you can't do it. And there's so many stories of individuals that are coming away from, heart surgery or, a major injury, and they are doing what people might have never thought was possible. From that, background or that story, is there a stopping point where we should say, hey, no, like, let's not do it. But then again, we can see the other side of like, someone can say no, but then we can see that it was possible.
So you're asking if you should, the point where people should stop, I guess, or listen to the experts?
Yeah, like basically it's like we can look at the stories of people who were told no. Roger Bannister, you can't run a 4-minute mile, right? You know, scientist says your heart's going to implode, and all the people is like, it can't be done, but he believed it could be done. And he did it. And then sure enough, 2 weeks after he did it, everyone else was doing it. So, you know, like literally it's just, if humans essentially can see that things can be done, is it something that they should do to overcome those limits or to overcome those impossible type-minded individuals? They're fixed in a sense, like they have a fixed mindset. They're like, you can't do it. Look, you have a broken leg, you can't do it. Your heart's gonna, break or something. So we can look at all the science, we can look at all the data, and there is some validity there. But then again, human potential is something that is almost immeasurable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a tough question because there is a balancing act, I guess, right? In one sense, as you said, there's validity on almost both sides. You can't, I can't sit here and say negate medical advice, right, or anything like that. But obviously, yeah, there's been history has shown that people have done incredible things when they've gone past the limits that have been set, and to see beyond it. So yeah, it's a tough question for me to really answer because it's complex and has you said, like, yeah, it's complex.
But if you could answer it, this is just me and you talking. This is just a conversation, but you know, like, this is not something we're going to ding you with. And, you know, just an understanding, because mindset is the state or quality of your mind. And we can look at Carol Dweck's growth and fixed mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we can see the people who have the growth mindsets and a positive demeanor and nature and a more optimistic view on things, they actually heal quicker. So we can look at what the body does versus what the mind does. And, you know, like if you work out, right? You go in the gym, you're basically tearing your muscle fibers, and your body is getting to the point of like, this person is so crazy. They're over here destroying their body. And so what the body naturally does, or what the mind does for the body, is we're going to repair you, right? We're going to give you, it's almost like a, what's the word? I want to say instinct, but I don't know if instinct is the right word. But it basically gives them like an urge to do better. Like, okay, we're going to drink more water. We're going to eat better foods and things like that. A story I think about was when a guy was stranded on a desert island. I know this has nothing to do with sports, but this is just a fun story. He was lacking in vitamin B12 or something. So he started to get a craving for fish eyes, because that's all he was basically eating. He was on a desert island. So he had this craving for fish eyes. And, you know, to me, fish eyes, like, I don't want to eat a fish eye. But to him, it was something like, hey, I want fish eyes. And it was because instinctually, or maybe, you know, just in his DNA, he knew what he needed. So at some point, you know, people can tell us what we need to do, but then at the same time, it's like they don't truly understand what we want to do, because maybe there's this this innate beast or monster inside of us that wants to come out, and we don't care how it comes out, and we don't care what we have to do to get it. It's like that drive that no one else can see but us.
No, absolutely. The mind is a very powerful thing, and intuition is a very powerful thing. So yeah, I guess I'm not even sure really what the question is, but yeah, kind of what you stated.
No questions. It's just conversation.
Yeah. So I mean, you said kind of everything that I would say is the mind is powerful. It can overcome, you know, a lot of things, and it's been shown, as you said, you know, thinking more positively, being happier, has been shown to help people to heal and to recover faster and better. So yeah, there really is a lot of scientific evidence to support that the mind is a very powerful thing, and can help in a lot of different ways.
One of the last questions I want to ask is your greatest success story in your work.
Greatest success story. It's hard to pinpoint just one, especially 15 years. You know, there's so many now people I've come across, and clients, and various success stories in different ways. I think for me to really stand out, just, off the top of my mind, I think, one for me is, I worked with a young athlete who is, just about to get into high school, and was able to work with her all the way through. So she went off to UCLA, and to really help her, overcome and deal with the challenges of being a high school athlete, and, get to a point where she was comfortable walking away from her sport and being good with that, and being able to move into the next chapter of her life, and feel like she had some skills that were not just, had not just helped her in soccer, but also was going to help her when she, stepped into being an adult. I think that's always, has always sat with me, and I've have a number of athletes that I've worked with in that light. And I think those are some fantastic success stories when you get to work with someone so young and really help them set a foundation and set up some fantastic qualities that are going to carry with them for the rest of their lives. And then, the other end of the spectrum, working with a professional team that I did for 4 years, and really being able to be in there and work with those guys at such a high level, and being able to, just kind of tweak something here and there and see such a dramatic difference in their on ice performance is also really, really cool to see, to be able to work with people who, have really got to the top of their sport, physically, and the highest level, or just below the highest level that they possibly can be at. And to see what training the mind, as you said, the power of the mind we were talking about earlier, to see what training the mind and just even doing a little bit of the basics for someone with that amount of skill can really do for them.
Those are good success stories. And I know many people are vying for a story that is also filled with success in their life, whether it be just personal life or sports, where we have to not be able to dare. We have to not be able to, or we should get away from the aspect of failure. I know, we have this burden that we're given at a very young age to be this great person in the world, right? To be a good daughter, a good son, a good student, a good team player, a good friend, whatever, right? So we oftentimes sometimes feel like we're fighting this fight by ourselves. And I'm here to say that there's always going to be individuals that want to see you win and succeed too. Because a success story is not only their success, it's also yours, right? It's shared. Because when a team wins, the team wins. It's not just you win, right? And it feels better, right? When you can say that I worked with someone and, we won together. Because I could think back at when I was learning to play guitar. And this is, again, it's another tangent. I'm on tangent day today. My first guitar teacher, he says, one day you're going to realize that when you're all done with all the lights and everyone is all done cheering for you, and you go home and you're all alone and you pick up the guitar and you start practicing again, people don't see how much work you put in behind closed doors. They only see the product of what you display in front of them. And I started to think about that. And I said, the product of what we display in front of them, they're not going to appreciate the hard work. They're not going to appreciate all the long nights and all the training sessions and things like that. But the coach will. The coach does. Because they saw what you did, right? Everyone sees the championship rings and they get your jersey with the name on it, maybe, but they didn't see you at practice, right? They didn't see you overcoming an injury or something like that, but the coach did, right? And I'm sure Kate has seen so many of those individuals also, and I can also say that I'm sure she was also that voice in saying, "Hey, we can get through this." It wasn't you can get through this by yourself; it was we can. And that's the aspect of having a coach, having a mentor, having someone on your side, having someone on your team, essentially, to help you through those tough times, to help you through those moments. So as we begin to wrap up, Kate, I would love to have you please share some final words with us, and then tell the audience where they can find you.
No, absolutely. I think taking off of what you said, having a coach is such an powerful and an impactful thing. And it really gives you said, that ability to know that you're not alone and to have someone in your corner, someone to, help you put the pieces together. I think, all of us can only do so much by ourselves, and that's where coaches come in handy. And I think that's, going back to one of your earlier questions of what separates the greats is I think they understand that and they get those people around them that support them and help them in various aspects and build everything that they can from within them, but have people that will going to help them and guide them to be able to do that. Where people can find me, my website is probably one of the best places, and it's qpathlete.com. My Instagram, probably the best social media if you want to follow me, which is qpathlete as well as the handle. And then I do have some videos on YouTube under Quantum Performance. So those are probably the best places to find me if anybody's interested in kind of diving a little bit further into mental performance and likes reading books. Then I do have a book called The Athlete Within that's available on Amazon. And those would be some great places to start.
Perfect. And I'll make it easy for everyone. Right down below, check out all the links, follow her on socials, get her book, learn about the work she does from her website, and inquire if you're ready to reach that next level. Whether you are just starting off in your athletic career or you are a seasoned professional looking to get to the next level, success is going to be viable. Success can be yours, but you do have to understand that it's not a fight that you should take alone. It's something that you should embark on with someone who's going to have not only the skill, but also the mindset to help you achieve so much more. So I do want to thank you, Kate, for coming on, spending a little bit of time and talking about your work today.
Thank you so much for having me.